Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Today is June 30th of 2018. It is a Sabbath day. I hope you all are enjoying your blessed Sabbath day, and you're doing the things that are right by not violating anything or any of the laws pertaining to the Sabbath day. Once again, brace yourselves, tighten up your jaws, don't turn to the left or to the right, or you will get hit in the mouth. Today's lesson, we will cover leprosy. We have heard of it. I will give you 3 specific instances of the case of leprosy that you may know exactly what this is and how one can possibly get it and the reasons why this can possibly happen to someone. So we will cover leprosy once again, and that will be the lesson of the day, the law of leprosy. Now, let's start off. Grab your books, of course. Grab your books. Once you hear me say grab your books, you know you have to get your book to read, okay? So let's grab our books and let's go to Leviticus chapter 14. Leviticus chapter 14, and we will deal with verse 32 through 34. That way we may get a clear understanding of what leprosy is. Leviticus chapter 14 and verse 32 reads, "This is the law of him in whom is the plague of leprosy." So we understand clearly that leprosy is a plague, whose hand is not able to get that which pertaineth to his cleansing. Verse 33, "And Yah spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, When ye be come into the land of Canaan, which I gave to you for a possession, and I put the plague of leprosy in an house of the land of your possession." So this is to establish clearly that leprosy is a plague, and is a plague that's caused by the Most High. He can put it in houses or he can put it on a person. Okay, so leprosy is a plague. So let's be clear upon that. Now, let's jump back to Leviticus chapter 13. Leviticus chapter 13, and we will read verse 29 through 31. Leviticus chapter 13, and we'll read verse 29 through 31. And verse 29 of Leviticus chapter 13 reads, "If a man or woman have a plague upon the beard, upon the head or the beard," verse 30, "then the priest shall see the plague, and behold, if it be in sight deeper than the skin, and there be in it a yellow thin hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a dry scald, even a leprosy upon the head or beard." Verse 31, "And if the priest look on the plague of the scald, and behold, it be not in sight deeper than the skin, and that there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut him up that has the plague of the scald 7 days." So, when you have leprosy upon the skin, it makes an indentation in the skin. Okay, so the skin is white and the hair becomes yellow. Another way to say yellow is blonde. So if the skin is black, or if the hair is black, okay, if the hair is black, then there is no leprosy. Okay, but if the hair is blonde or yellow, okay, then that person is pronounced unclean, as it's read here in verse 30. And verse 30 read once again, "Then the priest shall see the plague, and behold, if it be in sight deeper than the skin, and there be in it a yellow thin hair," blonde hair, yellow hair, "then the priest shall pronounce him unclean, he's a leper. It is a dry scald, even in leprosy upon the head or the beard." Okay, so we understand that part. Verse 31, "And if the priest look on the plague of the scald, and behold, it be not in sight deeper than the skin." So it's not deeper than the skin. There is no indentation in it. "And that there is no black hair in it." Okay, so no indentation in the skin. and there's no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut him up that has the plague of the skull 7 days. So what we're understanding here is leprosy, there's an indentation in the skin, and the hair on the person's arm is yellow. Another word for that would be blonde. Okay, so you understand that. Now let's stay in the same chapter. Let's jump down to verse 37. Verse 37 of the same chapter reads, "But if the skull be in his sight at a stay, and that there is black hair grown up therein, the skull is healed. He is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean." So what this is saying here is if things appear to be stabilized and there is black hair in that white spot where that indentation is, if there's black hair there, then this person is clean and they can be pronounced clean. But if in that spot there's an indentation, of course the skin will be white and the hair will be yellow. Another word is blonde. So what this is letting you know here is that, number one, with leprosy, the skin is made white and the hair is made yellow or blonde. That is to be firmly established by reading this text. Now, let's move to Numbers chapter 12. We're going to deal with Moses' sister being cursed with leprosy or being plagued with leprosy. We will cover the 3 main instances in this book where leprosy was pronounced on someone, and you will see exactly why this was done. All right, let's move to Numbers. We'll go to Numbers chapter 12. Numbers chapter 12. And this is where Moses' sister Miriam was made white. And we will read all of Numbers chapter 12. Numbers chapter 12, verse 1 reads, "And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman." Now, Ethiopian people are nothing but another type of black people. If you look throughout the continent of Eden, commonly known as Africa, you will see many different phenotypes. They're all black people with different phenotypes, with different skin textures or hue, and they have different textures of hair. But in the general term, they're all black people. So here you have Moshe, an Israelite man, what you would call a black man, married another black woman who is an Ethiopian. The problem here is not the appearance of skin or melanin in the skin. The difference here is the bloodline, number one, and the difference is going to be in the God in whom they serve. So you have a cultural difference, though they may look the same in appearance. Okay, so that is the contention that Aaron and Miriam had with Moses marrying an Ethiopian woman. She looked like them, but she is not of their bloodline, and culturally they're not the same, though they may in appearance at the naked eye appear to be the same. Verse 2, "And they said, Hath Yah indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? And Yah heard it." So Miriam and Aaron, who are both the siblings of Moses, they are saying that, well, God spoke to us too. He didn't only speak to Moses. So they're feeling some kind of way about Moses marrying this Ethiopian woman. And they're saying amongst themselves that, well, the Most High didn't only speak to this Moshe, he spoke to us too. But the Most High heard this thing. Verse 3, "Now the man Moses was very meek, above all the men which were upon the face of the earth." Verse 4, "And Yah spake suddenly unto Moses and unto Aaron and unto Miriam, Come out ye three unto the tabernacle of the congregation. And the three came out, and they three came out." So the Most High heard this thing, and he summons all 3 of them at the door of the tabernacle. Verse 6, "And he said, Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, Yah, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moshe is not so, whom was faithful in all mine house. Verse 8. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And the similitude of Yah shall he behold. Wherefore, then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moshe? So, the Most High is letting the three of them know that, number one, if there's a prophet among you, I will speak to him in dreams, and I will speak to him in a vision. Now understand that we don't have any prophets in the midst of us now, scattered in the midst of these lands, because once we had prophets, we did not hearken, we didn't listen to the prophets. So the Most High took those prophets away. So Israel, at this moment in time, we do not have any prophets. We are to refer back to the prophets that we were given at the first in the days of old. That's why we read this book of remembrance. Now, the Most High is letting Miriam know and letting Moshe know, and he's letting us know, because we are to remember, we are to revert back to this book, because our memories were removed. So this is for them back then, and this is for us right now as we read this text, as we go through these scrolls. The Most High says clearly, verse 8, with him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And the similitude of Yah shall he behold. Wherefore, then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moshe? What we are to take from this is we are to be mindful and to be very careful when we decide to speak against anyone that's walking in this law, that's serving the Most High. It will be to our detriment. So you're to be careful when dealing with those who serve the Most High, and you try to be in opposition to them, because if the Most High is strengthening them and you go against them, it will be to your hurt. Verse 9. And the anger of Yah was kindled against them, and he departed. So the Most High was upset with both Miriam as well as Aaron for what they have said, or what they were saying pertaining to their brother Moshe. Verse 10. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. Now, what you have here is, once the Most High departed, because he was upset because of what the two of them were doing pertaining to Moshe, speaking ill of him, when the Most High was finished correcting them, he departed. And upon doing so, Miriam became white, leprous, white as snow. What are we to take from this? We're to understand clearly that Miriam was not white to start with. That's point one. Okay, so he's not going to make her white if she was white from the start. That's one point to remember. Now, verse 11. And Aaron said unto Moses, Alas, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not this sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. So, understand that just speaking against a servant of the Most High, i.e. Moshe, they had sinned in doing this thing, in speaking ill of a servant of the Most High. This is serious business. I want you to understand that. All right? So, at this point, Aaron is acknowledging his error. Okay? And they understand clearly by him looking at Miriam, okay, he knows that they have done wrong. Verse 12. Let her not be as one dead, of whom the flesh is half consumed when he cometh out of his mother's womb. What is Aaron saying here? Let her not be as one dead. A dead person is lacking pigmentation. They're pasty. They are pale. Okay, if you take your hands and soak it in, let's say, dishwashing liquid or water for quite some time, your skin becomes white, pasty, lacking its pigmentation. It looks abnormal in relation to the rest of your body or the rest of your skin and its pigmentation. So Aaron is petitioning here. Look, she looks like someone dead out of the womb. when a child comes out of the womb, they have been laying in water for 9 months, or in the fluids of their mother's womb. Okay, once they come out of the womb, they do not have their full pigmentation. They're somewhat pasty. So this is the appearance of Miriam at the time that she is made leprous. And so Aaron she's looking like a dead person. She's pale, look like she's half consumed. Okay, like the babies look when they come out of the womb. Verse 13. And Moshe cried unto Yah, saying, heal her now, O Yah, I beseech thee. So if Moshe has to petition to the Most High to heal his sister Miriam after the Most High made her white, it should be clear to all the children of Israel that anyone that looks like that is not a normal thing, and that anyone that looks like that is someone that the Most High has plagued them. I want you to remember that. Okay, if someone looks like that, the Most High has put a plague upon them. All right, now verse 14. And Yah said unto Moshe, if her father had spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that let her be received again. So the Most High is saying, had her father spit in her face, she'd be isolated, cut off from her people for 7 days. So let her be cast out of this camp for 7 days, and after 7 days, let her be received again. Now, verse 15. And Miriam was shut out from the camp 7 days, and the people journeyed not till Miriam was brought in again. Verse 16. And afterward the people removed from Hazeroth and pitched in the wilderness of Paran. Now, that concludes that chapter. Now, what is to be made clear here is this. Number one, leprosy, not a normal thing. The house of Israel, number one, did not look white. They were not white. And that is why she was made white. Moses and Aaron, you can tell by reading this text, this is a horrifying thing. This is not normal. Okay? So the whole house of Israel, we were not moving about in the wilderness. We stayed 1 week in the same spot until Miriam was healed and made whole again. So I want you to kind of remember that. All right? So this was not a normal thing at all. And we are to remember this specific instance when the Most High plagued her with leprosy and made her white. As a nation of people, we are to understand a few things from this. Number one, we were not white. White is not normal to us. And anyone that looks like this, the Most High has plagued them. Number two, to take from this chapter, be cautious when you speak ill of anyone that is in service to the Most High. Because the Most High is with him, the Most High strengthens him, and for you to speak against him will be to your hurt. That's what you to take from this one chapter. Now, let's now move over to Deuteronomy chapter 24. Deuteronomy chapter 24. Now, in Deuteronomy chapter 24, we will read verse 8 and verse 9. Deuteronomy chapter 24, we will start off with verse 8. Verse 8 of Deuteronomy chapter 24 reads, take heed in the plague of leprosy. Once again, leprosy is a plague. That thou observe diligently and do according to all that the priests, the Levites, shall teach you. As I commanded them, so ye shall observe to do. Verse 9. Remember. Key word. When we're reading the book of remembrance, since we have been scattered into these nations and our memories removed, our heritage removed, etc., we have to revert back to this book of remembrance. Okay? So we are told to remember every time, because we have to look back. We have to reflect back. A man who has lost his memory and is suffering from amnesia he has to remember who he is and where he's from. So you have to show him things of the past. Now, verse 9. Remember what Yah thy strong one did unto Miriam by the way, after that ye were come forth out of Egypt. So we are to remember what the Most High did to Miriam when we came out of Egypt. So if we're to remember that, then it's clear to us that the Most High's people are not white. So anyone coming to us, bringing the book of God or the word of God and looks anything like Miriam looked, we know they're not the people of God, because the people of God didn't look that way. Once we start to remember this. Okay, so that's why we are encouraged to remember. As we start to go back into the books of the laws and the prophets, we understand clearly where we have been deceived in the midst of the nations. All right, so we have read Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 8 and 9. Now, let's jump over to 2 Kings chapter 5, and we will deal with Gehazi. 2 Kings chapter 5. All right. We're at 2 Kings. We'll read chapter 5, and we will deal with where this man by the name of Gehazi was made leprous. All right. 1 second. All right. Once again, we're at 2 Kings. We're at 2 Kings chapter 5. 2 Kings chapter 5, and we'll read Gehazi and his leprosy. We'll read the whole entire chapter for clarity. Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and honorable, because by him Yah had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man in valor, but he was a leper. So, Naaman, okay, this man is a leper, all right? But he was the captain of the host of the king of Syria. And remember, Syria have conquered Israel. Now, verse 2. And the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away captives out of the land of Israel, a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. So what has happened is the Syrians, the Most High, had strengthened the Syrians against the house of Israel. So Israel conquered. So Syria conquered Israel. Okay? Now, when this was done, the Syrians took away captives. All right? The Syrians took captives away to Syria. So we have Israelites in Syria. And this one woman is working for the captain of the host, or one of the generals of the Syrians, and one of his maids, so to speak, happens to be a woman of the house of Israel. All right? Verse 3. And she said unto her mistress, would Yah my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. So the young Israelite that's working for this Syrian general is telling her mistress, or telling Naaman's wife, you know, if he went to Samaria, there's a prophet in Samaria that would heal him of his leprosy. That's what she's telling him. Verse 4. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, thus and thus saith the maid that is in the land of Israel. So, once again, like I've said, the woman that's a captive is telling her boss or her mistress that there's a prophet in Samaria that can heal your husband of his leprosy. Verse 5. And the king of Syria said, go, and I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed, and took with him 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of raiment, clothing. Verse 6. So this man, Naaman, he went and told the king, say, look, king, I've got a maid working for me that's an Israelite, and she's telling me that there's a prophet in Samaria that can heal me of this leprosy. So the king say, look, go ahead and go. So the man had got some gold and some silver, etc., and some clothes, and the king has given him authorization. The king of Syria has given him authorization to go into Samaria and find this prophet and be healed of your leprosy. All right. And the king of Syria wrote a letter to the king of Israel, okay, to kind of petition for this man to be healed. All right, verse 6. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, Now when this letter is come unto thee, behold, I have therewith sent Naaman, my servant, to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. So the king in Israel, he's a conquered king because the Syrians are running the show. But still, he's allowed to have some amount of governance. So the king of Syria sent a letter with Naaman to the king of Israel. So the king of Syria is telling the king of Israel in this letter, hey, look, I've sent my top general to you. Heal him of his leprosy. And I know the king of Israel is looking at this like, heal him of his leprosy. I don't have the ability to do this. Anyway, let's continue. Verse 7. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he rent his clothes and said, Am I God to kill and to make alive? That this man does send unto me to recover a man of his leprosy. Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. So the king of Israel gets this letter from the king of Syria. And the king of Syria is telling the king of Israel, I've sent you my top general, heal him of his leprosy. So our king, correct term governor, reads this letter. Now keep in mind, he's conquered. And the Syrian king is running the show. He's just there he's a puppet, if you will. So he's reading this like, oh man, I can't heal this man of his leprosy. Why would he send this man down here to me for me to heal him? I can't heal him. He's trying to make problems with me. He's trying to cause problems for me because I can't do this. That's the thought process of our governor at this point. All right. So he's thinking that the king of Syria is seeking to make a quarrel against him. Verse 8. And it was so, when Elisha, the man of Yah, had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, torn his clothes, okay, that he sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Elisha, a prophet of the Most High, he heard what took place pertaining to that letter being sent to the king of Israel. So Elisha petitioned to the king of Israel, saying, Look, why did you tear your clothes? Send that man to me. I will heal him, and they will know that there is a prophet in Israel. All right. Verse 9. So Naaman came with his horses, and with his chariot, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. So Naaman, the captain of the host, or the general of the Syrian king, he is now standing at the door of Elisha with a great train, so to speak, a great company with him, horses, chariots. He has his gold and silver and whatever else that he brought with him. Okay. Verse 10. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, Go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. So this man came from Syria all the way to Israel to be healed of his leprosy. So he gets to Israel. He goes to the house of the prophet, and the prophet sends his messenger to him and says, Look here, Naaman. Now Naaman came a great way from Syria to Israel. He said, Look, Naaman, go wash in the Jordan 7 times, and after you've done that, you'll be healed. I know that man is irritated because he's figuring, I could have washed in the great rivers in Syria. I didn't have to come way out here. That's his thought process. All right. Verse 11. But Naaman was wroth. He's upset. He's angry. And went away and said, Behold, I thought he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of Yah, his strong one, and strike his hand over the place and recover the leper. So Naaman is thinking that Elisha was going to come out, raise his hand and do whatever over him at that very time, and that he would be cured of his leprosy in that manner. So he was quite disappointed in the way it actually took place. All Elisha did was send his servant to tell Naaman, hey, look, go wash down in the Jordan 7 times and you'll be healed. This man expected a seance and whatnot. Anyway, verse 12. Are not Abana and Parpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. So Parpar, this is a river in Damascus, and so is Abana. So these are 2 great rivers in Damascus. So he's saying, look, we've got 2 rivers in Damascus. I could have just washed in them and be clean instead of coming way out here to be told I'm to go and wash in the Jordan. So he's very upset about what has transpired thus far. Verse 13. And his servants came near and spake unto him and said, My father, if the prophet had bid thee to do some great thing, wouldst thou not have done it? How much rather then, when he has saith to thee, wash and be clean. So the servant of Naaman is telling him, look, had this prophet told you something great and extravagant, would you not have gone and done it? So how come he's telling you something as simple as going and wash down in the Jordan, and you don't want to do that? It's as simple as it can possibly be for you to fix this leprosy, this plague of leprosy. Had he commanded that you would do something great, you would have done it. But he's asking for you to do a simple thing, and you have contention with that. Now, here's the thing with our people pertaining to this matter. The Most High asks of us a very simple thing, and that is to return unto his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts that he had given us at the first, that we are to turn and face Jerusalem in the lands of our captivity, in the lands where we have been taken captive. We are to find where Jerusalem is, where our first temple was built, and we are to turn towards that house, which is no longer there, and we are to make our supplication by lifting our hands in prayer, admitting our faults. And the Most High said if we will do this, us and our children, and return unto his laws, that he will hear, he will help, and he will heal us. And not only that, he will also retrieve us and gather us out of the many lands in which he has scattered us. Now, that's a very simple thing. However, and you don't have to leave your house to do this. So that's a simple thing that the Most High asks of us once we're brought to remembrance in the many different lands in which we have been scattered. However, that's just too simple for Israel. We want to do something extravagant. We want to march, protest, burn down cities, and all these things that, number one, we have tried and it has failed. And all it does is multiply our sin. So that's something for us to take from this. We're asked a simple thing that can actually heal us, yet we're trying to do extravagant things. That's not working. So Naaman here is the same situation with him. It's a simple thing for him to be healed, but he's expecting something to be extravagant. And had that been tasked to him, his servant is telling him, if he had asked you to do something extravagant, you would do it. But here he's asking you something very simple, and you have contention with that. All right? Something to take from this. Anyway, verse 14. Then went he down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the saying of the man of Yah. And his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a child, and he was clean. So Naaman actually did go down into the Jordan. and he dipped in the Jordan 7 times, and he was indeed healed, and his flesh came upon him like that of a child. You know, a brand new baby has really nice skin. Uh, and he was clean. The man was clean of his leprosy. Verse 15. And he returned to the man of Yah, he and all his company, and came and stood before him. So Naaman now, after he had done this, he returned back unto the house of Elisha. Okay, so now he's back, him and his company, his great train with him. He's got his company with him, chariots and horses. And he said, behold, I know that there is no God in all the earth, but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. So Naaman, he comes back to Elisha and he's saying, look, man, I'm healed. What you have told me has certainly worked. So now I know for sure there's no God but the God that's in Israel, because in Syria no one could heal me. So here I've returned, I've come unto Israel, met a man of the Most High who has instructed me how to be healed. Though he had contention with it at first, he did go down and dipped 7 times, and he's healed. So now he comes back to Elisha, and he's confessing to Elisha, there's no God but the Most High Yah. And for what you have done, allow me to reward you with some presents. That's pretty much what he's saying at this point. Okay? Now, verse 16. But he said, this is Elisha speaking, as Yah liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. So Naaman is trying to give Elisha some gifts because he is healed. He's thankful for it. So he would like to repay him in some fashion. But Elisha is telling him, as long as the Most High live and that I stand before him, I don't want any gifts from you. And though Naaman urged Elisha to take the gifts, Elisha utterly refused it. Verse 17. And Naaman said, shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules, burden of earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto Yah. So, what Naaman is saying here, well, I can give 2 mules. I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules. So he wanted to give the servant of Elisha 2 mules. Okay? And he's also saying here that he will not offer any burnt offering or any sacrifice unto any other god, but to the Most High Yah of Israel. So Naaman, the Syrian general, is stating clearly, from now on, I'm not offering sacrifices unto any other god, but the God of Israel, because chances are this man, having leprosy, has offered up all types of sacrifices and have made petition to the gods or the idols of Syria in times past. But he was not healed of his leprosy. So he came down to Israel, and a man of the Most High told him what he needed to do to be healed. And he was healed. So therefore, his trust now and his strength now is in the God of Israel. So he's claiming that from now on, I'm not serving anyone but the God of Israel. That's what he's saying. And he also tried to offer 2 mules to the assistant of Elisha. Anyway, verse 18. In this thing, Yah pardon thy servant. So he's asking for the Most High to pardon him for serving idols in times past. Now when my master goeth into the house of Ramon to worship there, and he leaneth on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Ramon, when I bow down myself in the house of Ramon, thy Yah pardon thy servant in this thing. So this is the house of the deities of Syria. So Naaman is asking that when the king of Syria goes into this house of idol worship up there in Syria, he's speaking of when he returns, that when he has to go through this little thing and play along and bow down in the house of the idol in Syria, that the Most High will pardon him for it. All right, now, verse 19. And he said unto him, Go in peace. So he departed from him a little way. So he was told, Naaman, the Syrian general, was told by Elisha, hey, look, go in peace. All is well. There's no need for you to repay me with any gifts. This is the work of the Most High. This is the blessings of the Most High. I don't need to be paid for this. Anyway, verse 20. But Gehazi is the assistant to Elisha. Elisha is the man of God. I want you to remember that. He is the prophet. Okay? So Gehazi is his assistant. Now, but Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, Behold, my master has spared Naaman this Syrian in not receiving at his hand that which he brought. But as Yah liveth, I will run after him and take somewhat of him. So what happens here is Gehazi, the assistant to the prophet of the Most High, he's like, hold up. My master done healed this Syrian general. This Syrian general brought gold, silver, and clothing and wanted to give up all these gifts to my master. But my master didn't take any of this thing. So what I'm going to do, as long as the Most High live, I'm going to go after this man. I'm going to get some of those goods he tried to give my master that my master refused. I'm going to go get some of that. That's his thought process. Verse 21. So Gehazi followed after Naaman. And when Naaman saw him running after him, he lighted down from the chariot to meet him and said, Is all well? So the assistant to the prophet went after this man, flagged him down. So the man got off of his mule and asked Gehazi, Hey, is everything okay? Is all well? Why are you chasing after me like this? What's going on? Verse 22, and he said, All is well. My master hath sent me, saying, Behold, even now there be come to me from Mount Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver and 2 changes of raiment. So what Gehazi has done, he has ran behind this Syrian general, and he is telling a lie. Because Elisha clearly told this man, as long as the Most High live, I will receive no gifts at your hand. Peace be unto you, and be gone about your way. But his servant Gehazi, who heard all this and saw all this, when the man left, he figured, you know what, I'm going to go get some of these goods. So he ran behind this man, he ran behind the Syrian general, and he told this man a lie. Verse 23. And Naaman said, Be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him, and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, with 2 changes of garments, and laid them upon 2 of his servants, and they bare them before him. Verse 24. And when he came to the tower, he took them from their hand, and bestowed them in the house, and he let the men go, and they departed. So, what Gehazi had done, he took 2 men with him, ran up behind the Syrian general and said, Look, these 2 men are sons of the prophets. They just came here from Ephraim. And my master said that you are to give these men these goods that you sought to give him. So once again, he's telling a lie. And I'm just reading how this has transpired. Now, verse 25. But he went in and stood before his master. And Elisha said unto him, Whence comest thou, Gehazi? And he said, Thy servant went not whither, or went no whither. So after Gehazi was done doing his foul deed in lying to the Syrian general, and it's lying and stealing is what he did pretty much. Once he got back, Elisha asked him, he said, Gehazi, where have you been? He said, I haven't been anywhere. I didn't go anywhere. So he's told two lies already, and took that which appertaineth not unto him. It didn't belong to him. So he told two lies, and he stole from the Syrian general by way of lying. Now, so he's saying clearly in verse 25, I didn't go anywhere. Now verse 26, and he said unto him, went not mine heart with thee? So Elisha is telling Gehazi, the thing that you have done, my heart was not with you. I didn't authorize this thing. When the man turned again from his chariot to meet thee, is it a time to receive money and to receive garments and olive yards and vineyards and sheep and oxen and men servant and maid servant? Is it a time to be receiving gifts? Verse 27, the leprosy therefore of Naaman shall cleave unto thee and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper, as white as snow. That ends 2 Kings chapter 5. Now, that is the leprosy of Gehazi. The leprosy that Naaman came from Syria with, that leprosy was put upon Gehazi, the servant of Elisha. Why? Not only was it put on Gehazi, but it was placed upon his seed forever. So that man left out of the presence of Elisha white as snow. Once again, that indicates clearly that he wasn't white from the start. Now, he was plagued because, number one, he's a liar. Number two, he is greedy. So, when you look upon the earth today, look at whom is robbing your pension funds, who's stealing money in vast numbers, and who has systematically and blatantly told lies to the people of the earth. Now remember, this was placed upon Gehazi and his seed. We have just read the lies of this man. We've just read this man telling a lie in order to receive substance. And this curse of leprosy, which is white, was placed upon this man and his seed. So therefore, when we see anyone coming to us trying to bring the word of the Most High, and they look like Gehazi, when they look like Gehazi, and they look like Miriam, we know the Most High has placed a plague upon them. And they have seriously and egregiously upset the Most High or walked contrary to his way or his counsel. We are to be mindful of those things. Now, let's jump to 2 Chronicles chapter 26, and we'll deal with verse 16 through 23. 2 Chronicles chapter 26. 2 Chronicles chapter 26, and we will deal with verse 16 through 23. We will deal with the leprosy, or Uzziah being made a leper. Okay, and Uzziah is the governor, what you call king in Judah. All right. Once again, 2 Chronicles chapter 26, and we will read verse 16 through verse 23. And verse 16 of 2 Chronicles chapter 26 reads, but when he was strong, his heart was lifted up. He became prideful, arrogant, to his destruction. And he transgressed against Yah of his strong one, and went into the temple of Yah to burn incense upon the altar of incense. Remember, the Most High has two altars. One, the altar of burnt incense. Two, the altar of burnt sacrifices. So this governor, incorrect term used, king, he grabbed a censer and busted up into the Most High's temple and made an attempt to light incense on the altar of incense. He is not to do this, for the simple fact the only people allowed in there are the priests, the Levites. And anyone that's to do that can get themselves killed. Those actions pertaineth only to the priest, the Levites, and no other Israelite. All right, verse 17. And Azariah the priest went in after him, and with him 80 priests, 80 men of Yah that were valiant men. So if you ever thought to yourself that the men of Levi, the priests of the Most High, was some kind of punk, you understand clearly that these pastors that you see that are effeminate and doing all manner of wickedness, these are not men of the Most High. They're not Levites, number one. But most importantly, you're reading here, these are valiant men. All right, so these are not punks by any means. These men are Levites. Verse 8. And they withstood Uzziah, the king, governor, and said unto him, It appertaineth not unto thee, Uzziah, to burn incense unto Yah, but to the priests, the sons of Aaron. In case you haven't been following these videos, you should know by now clearly that you cannot go up into the temple of the Most High unless you are a Levite, number one. And the only priest that there have ever been and will ever be unto the Most High will be the sons of Aaron. The Most High has a perpetual covenant with Aaron that his sons will always minister unto him forever. There's no such thing as a female priest. There's no such thing as a priest of another nation other than the house of Israel. There's also no such thing as a priest outside the bloodline of Aaron. Let that be firmly established. That are consecrated to burn incense. Go out of the sanctuary, for thou hast trespassed. Neither shall it be for thine honor from Yah. So Uzziah the governor busted up into the sanctuary, grabbed a censer, trying to light incense onto the Most High on the altar. This doesn't pertain unto him. This is a great trespass for him to do this. But his heart was lifted up and he was arrogant. So he felt, you know what? I'm the governor. I could bust up in here and just light incense on the altar of incense because I'm the governor. I could do what I want. And I guess that was his thinking at the time. Verse 19. Then Uzziah was wroth. He was upset and had a censer in his hand to burn incense. And while he was wroth, upset, he's probably talking noise to the priest at this point. He was wroth with the priest. The leprosy even rose up in his forehead before the priest in the house of Yah from besides the incense altar. So he busted up into the Most High's house, busted up into the sanctuary. He's got no business in there. Has a censer in his hand. These censers pertaineth only to the priest of the Most High. Tried to light or burn incense on the altar of incense. He's not allowed to do that. This is a great trespass. So he's upset with the priest. Mad. He's probably jawing at him, talking too much, making a bunch of noise in the Most High sanctuary. And while he's out there upset and mad and talking noise, Most High struck him right then with the plague of leprosy in his forehead. All right. So you understand that. Let me reread verse 19. Then Uzziah was wroth and had a censer in his hand to burn incense. And while he was wroth with the priest, the leprosy even rose up in his forehead before the priest in the house of Yah from besides the incense altar. Verse 20. And Azariah the chief priest and all the priests looked upon him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead, and they thrust him out from thence. Yea, himself hasted also to go out, because Yah had smitten him. So Yah smote him, had smitten him, had plagued him with the curse of leprosy, with the plague of leprosy. Verse 21. And Uzziah the king, correct term governor, was a leper unto the day of his death. and dwelt in a several house, being a leper, for he was cut off from the house of Yah. And Jotham, his son, was over the king's house, judging the people of the land. Verse 22. Now the rest of the acts of Uzziah, first and last, did Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, write. Verse 23. So Uzziah slept with his fathers. That means he died. You're not going to read in Uzziah, Amos, and Isaiah, whomever, any one of our prophets from the days of old, or any of our governors, or any one period. You will never read where they died and went up to heaven with God. You never read that. Verse 23. So Uzziah slept with his fathers. He's dead. And they buried him with his fathers in the same sepulchre, in the same cemetery with his fathers. He's gathered onto his fathers. In the field of the burial, which belonged to the kings, to the governors. So he's buried with the rest of the governors of Israel. For they said he is a leper, and Jotham his son reigned in his stead. Now, that concludes this lesson pertaining to the plague of leprosy. I've given you three main instances that we are to reflect upon pertaining to this plague, leprosy. This is not to be disparaging to anyone else. These are our records. As the children of Israel, as we can identify ourselves through these curses, we are to reflect back on the days of old and the records that has been left by our prophets, and we are to reflect upon them and do them and learn from them. So if we're to take to heart what has happened here and how the Most High has plagued those of the house of Israel and made them white, we understand clearly no one of the house of Israel was white. And when we see someone who is white in appearance on their skin and the hair on their skin is yellow, we are to be mindful of that and to consider it. Now, as it pertains to evolution, you will hear things that, man left Africa and went across the Bering Strait, and because of the cold weather, the black man all of a sudden became a white man, etc., etc., because of the climate. This is what is spoken of by the scientists and those who believe in quote-unquote evolution. Now, we know clearly that, to me, that doesn't hold up, for the simple fact that if apparently black people, quote-unquote, left Africa and was separated by the Bering Strait somehow, or crossed the Bering Strait and got separated when the Great Ice Age, and they became white, that's a bit far-fetched, for the simple fact that, number one, we can read clearly in our records here where people who were not white were made white, and the hair upon their skin was made blonde or yellow. So it did not take an ice age to make someone white. That's number one. Number two, there's a man by the name of an Eskimo. He's referred to as an Eskimo. An Eskimo has been in the ice for as long as we can recall. He can build a house made of ice and survive in it. And any one of us, any regular people that try to go in that climate to live there, number one, they would make it. But the Eskimo has been living in the ice for as long as we can remember. The Eskimo in his appearance is an Asian man with black hair. And as long as he continues to live out in those elements, he will always look like that. So if they're going to present to us that black people left Africa, went over the Bering Strait, got cut off by the Great Ice Age, and quote-unquote became white due to adaptation and mutation, then certainly the man that's living in the snow, known as an Eskimo, that's been there for as long as we can recall and will continue to live there, how come he isn't white? He is an Asian man. he will remain so. So that old snow make the black man white after he left Africa's nonsense. More than likely, after the great earthquake is how this separation took place. Moreover, you see clearly that Uzziah, once he was made a leper, he was separated. He had to live in a separate house. Someone else had to take his charge. We see clearly when when Miriam was made a leper, she was cut off from the house of Israel. So I want you to understand clearly that the Most High has these stipulations in his laws that he will cut you off from your people. He will cut you off from the house of Israel. He will cut you off from the congregation. Understand that if you're made a leper, you are cut off from your people. You are cut off from the congregation. Moreover, when you make a man and his seed, his children, his offspring lepers, and they're all white, okay, you're looking like a totally different set of people. You're going to be ostracized. You're going to be separated, number one. Moreover, these scientists will tell you that man's origins is in Africa. They will tell you this. And they will tell you that from Africa, all the peoples of the earth came of that family tree. They will tell you this. So if we read in Genesis that the Most High made man in his image, and we clearly understand that the original man looks like us, then it's clear to us that God looks like us, though no man has ever seen the face of the Most High. No man can see the face of the Most High and live. So if God made man in his image, we look like the Most High. Once we keep this in our minds, we will treat our fellow Israelite totally different. So we're to be mindful of that fact. So once again, if the original man came from Africa, and scientists has confirmed this, then it's clear that everyone else somehow has been separated or shifted into these different parts of the earth. And the plague of leprosy just separates the leper from the house of Israel. Based on the temperatures that are in Africa, if you are a leper, it would make it very difficult to survive in those climates because your skin would not have the melanin in which to take the heat. So therefore, if there are many lepers in that continent or on that continent, they would seek cooler climates, which would force migration. That's just something to think about. Anyway, understand clearly, the house of Israel, Moses, were not white people. And when Miriam was made white, it was a horrific thing for us to see that. It was a frightening thing. It was an abnormal thing. So anyone that you see that comes bringing you the words of the Most High, and they have anything pertaining to leprosy, you're to question that. Moreover, if you listen to your scientists and the voices and the words of our enemies, they would teach you that leprosy is a debilitating disease, that it will cripple you. That's what they teach. Now, we just read three instances of leprosy from the books of the prophets. Nowhere in here does it say that Naaman, Gehazi, or Miriam, or Uzziah, it doesn't say anywhere that they were crippled. It doesn't say anywhere that they were maimed. All it says simply is that they were made white, lepers, white as snow in appearance. But yet we're taught by our enemies that leprosy will cripple and debilitate you. That's not what's in our records. So we are to consider all of these things. And when anyone comes before you trying to teach you about the Most High, and they look like lepers, first thing you're to do is you are to remember what the Most High did to Miriam in the way. Deuteronomy 24 verse 8. You're to remember what he did to Miriam. You're to remember what was done to Gehazi. You are to remember what was done to Uzziah. When you upset the Most High, he plagues you with leprosy, and that causes you to be separated from your people. All right. Anyway, it's been 1 hour and 3 minutes. We are covering leprosy. We have covered that, so we understand clearly that once you are a leper, and you can be a dry leper, meaning you have leprosy, but you cannot transmit it to someone else. If you have leprosy, you understand clearly that is a plague from the Most High. Remember that. This is a plague. And you don't get plagued unless you have done something that has upset the Most High. So you're to be mindful of that. So the people that you may see that have this appearance, it could very well be that they are Israelites, that they are just Israelites separated from the Most High because they have done that which is egregious to the Most High, and thus he plagued them. Just something for you to consider. All right. It's been 1 hour and 4 minutes. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Stay in this book. Continue to read and study this book. What is currently happening is the maturity of the children of Israel. As a nation, we are growing. We're becoming grown up. Now, once we become grown, then we start to consider all that was taught to us when we were children. And now we're trying to make heads and tails of it. Okay, so what's going on now is we're actually taking all the things that we were taught, and we know we were taught the words of our enemies, i.e. this New Testament. So we're taking all that we were told now that we're grown, we're assessing it. We're making sense of it. We're contending with it, and we're studying. And in doing that, we're growing because we're now returning back to that which we were given at the first. And as we start to do this, we separate ourselves from the wickedness and the ways of our enemies. And I want you to understand a few things. As we start to separate from our enemies and from those who do not walk in the way, who are also Israelites, that becomes a problem. Because many of us think like our enemies and will do our enemies' bidding for profit and for position. Now imagine what would be the response of our enemies when they no longer control our thinking, when we no longer do their bidding, when we no longer follow their ways, walk after their gods. And now you have a group of people that you have conquered that have returned back onto their God and are not listening to anything you've got to say. They no longer respect you. They now see you as liars. They now see you as those who are contrary to the Most High and His Word, and they don't want anything to do with you. They just want to separate themselves from you. So as we start to grow up and start to do all of these things, I want you to consider how we will be received by our enemies in the many nations that we have been scattered in when we start to do these things. That we are no longer walking after their ways. We're no longer serving the God, the idols that they serve. And we start to return unto the Most High. And these curses start to fall upon their heads. How do you think that we will be received when these things start to happen? If you think they hate you now, when you try to separate yourselves from them, they will hate you even more because they will clearly understand why you're doing it, and they will start to see these curses fall upon their own heads. Now, with that said, I want you to take a look at the school shootings that's been happening here in America, and I want you to take a look at all the workplace violence as far as the killings. We just had one the other day. Notice that it's not our people doing this. It's not our children doing this. What you're seeing is part of the reversal of these curses. And I want you to understand you're seeing them on TV hollering, crying, and screaming. Our forefathers have been hollering, crying, and screaming, and no one ever paid them any mind. No one ever empathized with them or sympathized with them. So when our enemies have cried, We have always been there crying with them. You're going to see a change of that. You're going to see as the curses start to hit them, they've always wanted us to pray with them and pray for them and empathize with them. You will see the house of Israel totally turn away from them, will not cry with them, will not pray with them or for them. And that is something that our enemies have not been accustomed to. They have always been accustomed to the house of Israel, siding with them, empathizing with them in their time of trouble. Yet, while we were in trouble, and our trouble was caused by them, no one ever empathized or sympathized with us. So you're going to see to where when these shootings take place, we won't pay it any mind. And they're going to be angry at you for that. So watch as these killings increase. Their very weaponry, that which they place their trust in, will be their own demise. And I want you to understand that as they're crying and hollering because of the violence that will be increased in the midst of them, I want you to ask yourself, how come that God that they have given you is not saving their children from those bullets in those schools and those bullets in the workplace? There'll be more. So how come their God is not saving them and delivering them out of that? Just something for you to think about. And the reason why they can't be delivered is the same reason why you can't be delivered after turning to the God they have given you for 400 years. It's an idol. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Peace, Israel. Continue to return unto the Most High's law and do them. Teach it to your children. Make your videos and share them. Peace, Israel. God bless.